This week's Mandalorian review is coming to you from our Los Angeles hotel room the day before the Schmoedown, so I'm sorry for any traffic and other ambient noise you might hear in the background. The fifth episode of The Mandalorian was titled The Gunslinger. Last week's promise of more bounty hunters coming after the child is upheld with the opening scene. The Mandalorian is in a chase with another ship firing on them until he says he can bring him in warm or cold. I immediately said, hey, that's his line, and then the Mando shoots the bounty hunter and says the exact same thing, which I thought was funny. But the damage from the chase was substantial, and the Razor Crest is losing fuel, so they stop by the nearest planet, Tatooine. That alone is enough to make you expect plenty of callbacks, and this episode is full of them. He lands in Mos Eisley, and 3 pit droids attempt to start investigating his ship. They're led by Amy Sedaris, who I didn't even recognize the entire episode until the credits listed her. She is willing to let the Mando park there, but won't get started on repairs without money, so he heads out to find some work. That's where we see that shot of stormtrooper helmets on spikes that was in almost all of the trailers. Mos Eisley used to be occupied, and I feel like a city that's full of scum and villainy wouldn't be all too forgiving when the Empire fell. It makes me think back to the Aftermath books, where we see more of Coruscant's celebration from the end of the special edition of Return of the Jedi. It's not nearly as happy as the movie lets on. It turns into a violent riot. Kinda makes you think about what was happening on Mos Eisley during its shot in Jedi. Were stormtrooper helmets being placed on spikes somewhere? The Mando approaches the cantina, and I love that you can tell it's the cantina from the outside. They recreated it perfectly. But inside, a lot has changed. The droid detector is gone. Droids are roaming around freely. A droid even sits behind the bar now. I wonder if that was actually meant to be EV-99 from Jabba's palace, looking for work after her master died. But the credit concept art shows multiple EV droids, so it's probably just the same model, different droid. She tells the Mando the guild no longer operates on Tatooine, so maybe after Jabba died, criminal activity just died along with him. The whole city is a lot different from when we last saw it in A New Hope. The cantina is empty. It doesn't seem like a bustling spaceport anymore. I think this is meant to show that just because the Empire fell, it doesn't mean everything is great for everyone. Some places are looking worse off, although it could be argued that Mos Eisley is a lot better and more peaceful than it once was. The Mando meets Toro Calican sitting in Han's old booth, sitting like Han once did. He claims to be after a major target as his first assignment to get him into the Bounty Hunters Guild. The Mando agrees to help him take down the bounty, an assassin named Fennec Shand. He gets all the money, and Toro gets all the credit. So they meet up back at the hangar, and someone finally tells the Mando a little bit about parenting. I'm no parent, but I know it's bad to leave your baby in a bar and ask the bartender to watch it, or to leave it in your ship, alone, with the ramp down. Pelly the mechanic tells him he's got a lot to learn, so hopefully he starts listening. He needs to find a decent daycare to put Baby Yoda in while he goes on missions. He also needs to stop showing the baby to everyone he meets. Toro might not be in the guild yet, but you still probably shouldn't be advertising that you have the cutest and most precious child in the galaxy to him. But something I appreciate is that Pelly did start working on the Razor Crest. When the child wanders out, she immediately takes to it because who could resist, and then she starts repairs. Before she knew about Baby Yoda, she was just playing sabacc with her droids, but it's like everyone with half a conscience that comes across this little being becomes a better person because of it. Something about it inspires goodness. But Toro and the Mando head off into the Dune Sea on speeder bikes, which gave me some Shadows of the Empire vibes. They run into some Tusken Raiders, and the Mando negotiates passage using sign language. I like that he seemed sympathetic to the invasion of their land. Toro calls them filth, but the Mando has lived through an invasion, and his specific group of Mandalorians seem to be pretty tribal. I think he probably has a decent amount in common with the Tuskens. Next, they come across a dewback with a dead bounty hunter being dragged behind it, set up as bait by Fennec Shand. They wind up in a stalemate and have to wait until the sun set to make their move. The action sequence was exciting, and I think it's funny that the Mando gets shot 4 times in this episode. He is really testing the limits of that Beskar. But Toro distracts Sand long enough for the Mando to limp his way up and capture her. Then he has to leave to get that dewback so they can get her to Mos Eisley, and Fennec starts manipulating Toro. She mentions Navarro, which is the name of the planet where Greef and the rest of the Bounty Hunters Guild operated in the first and third episodes. She knows that a Mandalorian was responsible for the chaos there, and mentions that he's carrying a child, and of course Toro makes the connection because he saw the baby. She convinces him that the Mando is a better target than she would be, so he shoots her. That surprised me, and I'm skeptical that she's actually dead. I get why he did it, because yeah, she absolutely would have killed him if he uncuffed her, but I just want the character to stick around. Kind of like Cara Dune, I'm getting a little frustrated that these characters we've been hearing so much about in the lead-up are seemingly only popping in for 1 or 2 episodes. I guess right now I think she probably is dead, I'm just hoping to be wrong. When the Mando sees Shan's hopefully near-dead but not actually dead body, he knows what's happened and what's coming. He makes his way back to his ship where Toro is waiting. There's a brief standoff, but the Mando shoots the Gunslinger and is able to pay Peli for fixing his ship with credits he pulled off of Shand. He and the child leave Tatooine, but then we cut back to Shan's body. A pair of feet approach and kneel down beside her. This could mean she's still alive and someone is coming to help her, or it could simply mean someone is tracking the Mandalorian, or it could mean both. I guess I'm sadly thinking Shand is dead, because why just lie there all this time unless she were dead or very mortally wounded? If that's the case, who is tracking the Mando? Since they didn't show a face, my assumption is it's someone we would recognize. Greef Karga seems like a good guess. Maybe Boba Fett, maybe Bo-Katan. Even though I've got a bet going that Boba Fett will not be in this show, I think he's my best guess for now. Some of the sound effects in that scene were familiar from The Empire Strikes Back, and I'll just leave it at that. I liked this episode. It wasn't my favorite, but it was still a good time. It leaned very heavily on the familiar, which is fine to do on occasion. It still gave us new perspectives on old ideas. Mos Eisley and the Cantina have changed quite a bit. We see Tuskens negotiating. I appreciated all that stuff, but I did think the story itself was very predictable. Last week, with the episode synopsis alone, I guessed what was going to go down with this young bounty hunter and over his head. Next week, the Mandalorian will join a crew of mercenaries on a dangerous mission. I'd bet this is the Bill Burr episode. Hopefully the Mando takes some of those parenting tips to heart and finds a safe place for Baby Yoda while he's gone this time. But let me know what you thought of Chapter 5 in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and consider checking out our Patreon page where we are releasing audio commentaries for each Mandalorian episode. Chapter 4 is out now, and 5 will be out soon. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.